You're listening to the Lanterns Radio Network. We are the network dedicated to empowering the individual, illuminating the truth, defending American exceptionalism, and inspiring future generations. Stay connected and get involved at lanterns.buzz for great radio. Get commentary and news of the day. Lanterns.buzz.
Good afternoon, everybody. You're listening to the Holonet Podcast here on the Lanterns Media Network, live from Phoenix, Arizona. I'm your host, Matt Holloway. And I would say it's good to be back. It is good to be back here talking to you on the Holonet Podcast on Lanterns, but it's a bit of a sour tone this past week as the world came to understand the death of Alfie Evans. And it brought back memories of the similar passing of Charlie Gard. Today breaking, The Blaze confirms Facebook censorship. It is now undeniable, as a new story breaks with the Daily Caller and is promptly quashed by the social media network. All that and more, and even Red for Ed here in Arizona, here on the Holonet Podcast on the Lanterns Media Network. Stick around.
You're listening to the HoloNet Podcast on the Lanterns Media Network. The new conservative resistance begins right here, right now.
I will build a great wall on our southern border, and I will have Mexico pay for that wall. Mark my words.
The American people are frustrated because their elected officials don't listen. When we're home on the campaign trail, we say we listen. And yet something about this Senate floor, something about Washington, D.C., I don't know if it's the water, something in the air, the cherry blossom, but people get here and they stop listening to the American people.
What we witnessed here today in the Security Council is an insult. It won't be forgotten. It's one more example of the United Nations doing more harm than good in addressing the Israeli-Palestinian conflict.
My duty, and the sacred duty of every elected official in this chamber, is to defend Americans, to protect their safety, their families, their communities, and their right to the American dream. Because Americans are dreamers too.
I want the people of America to be able to work less for the government and more for themselves. I want them to have the rewards of their own industry. This is the chief meaning of freedom. Until we can reestablish a condition under which the earnings of the people can be kept by the people, we are bound to suffer a very severe and distinct curtailment of our liberty.
The chair recognizes the gentleman from Arizona. Thank you, everyone. Thank you. Senators, members of Congress, Mr. Speaker, and Mr. President. You had one damn job. Seriously.
Allied reinforcements have arrived from the west.
You're listening to the HoloNet on Lanterns Media Network. The millennial conservative resistance begins here.
Yes, that is right indeed. You are listening to the HoloNet podcast here on the Lanterns Media Network. And the new millennial resistance does indeed begin right here, right now with you. Thank you for joining us. My name is Matt Holloway, your, as always, humble host. Now, wanted to jump in today's show recognizing one of the most heartbreaking pieces of news of the day that this past week, as many of you are aware, Alfie Evans did lose his battle with the as yet still unknown degenerative brain condition that he had, with very little help, it would seem, from the United Kingdom's NHS, National Healthcare System. He died while the court battle was still ongoing to determine his parents' ability to even take him home. And conservatives across the US and across the UK who had been fighting as part of hashtag Alfie's Army and reposting and protesting in front of the Alder Hey Hospital. A good friend of mine, good friend of Lanterns in the show, Jonathan Dunn, was on the scene, and there are many great interviews with him on our Friends to Defenders of American Exceptionalism and also on The Blaze and on the Glenn Beck program, so you can check those out. That's Jonathan Dunn, Freedom's Disciple. The stories are absolutely heartbreaking, and the stories are very reminiscent of the story of little Charlie Gard. Now, for those of you who don't remember Charlie Gard, this took place also in the United Kingdom, and this was back in July of 2017. And it was a desperate legal battle for an 11-month-old baby who spent his entire little life in a hospital bed. And that was at Great Ormond Street Hospital. And his parents were told that the prognosis was very bleak. He had severe brain damage, couldn't open his eyes, he needed to be on a ventilator. And the parents wanted to come to the United States to seek treatment. A hospital in the United States agreed to offer Charlie treatment, echoing the agreement of the Roman hospital that had agreed to treat Alfie Evans. And similarly, the UK, in its legal capacities, refused to allow this. Now, the question that I have, where does this come from when it is no longer a question of cost? Because in the case of Charlie Gard's family, they had raised £1.3 million, which is more than sufficient to bring the entire family over to the United States for the duration of little Charlie Gard's hospital stay. Similarly, efforts were undertaken by the Vatican to bring little Alfie Evans to the hospital in Rome. A medevac helicopter was standing by a short distance away with trained medics and technicians who could safely transport him from Great Britain directly to Rome. So there was no additional cost being levied on the UK taxpayer by allowing this to happen. What we're talking about here is hubris and infallibility. The NHS in the United Kingdom, in order to function, must be, for all intents and purposes, infallible in their judgment as far as the public is concerned. Otherwise, it doesn't work, because these are the people, these are the bureaucracies that decide quite literally who lives and who dies. So for them to be wrong is an unacceptable circumstance. They can never be proven wrong. It sounds like a bit of a holdover from the medieval days, doesn't it? The crown can never be wrong. And thus, the government of the United Kingdom, acting as Her Majesty's government, can never be proven wrong. The entire existence of the state is predicated on the utter infallibility of the NHS. Now, I tweeted something out on the night of the 25th, and I know I was a little quieter on this subject than some of my colleagues and fellow conservative podcasters. That mainly has to do with some family issues that I was dealing with. But as soon as I had some time to put to it, I put out a tweet that said, if at royal family, tagging the royal family on there, specifically meaning the Queen, stormed into Alder Hey tonight and escorted Alfie Evans and family to, at Pontifex, that's the Pope, to the Pope's waiting medevac, the Queen would go down in history as the most heroic British monarch since her namesake defeated the Spanish Armada. Please, your majesty. Begging Queen Elizabeth to come down from her tower, to emerge from Buckingham Palace, and maybe in one of the last great gasps of the power of the monarchy, say, this court acts in my name and I will not allow it. Because one of the few prerogatives that are held in England as true is the sovereign cannot be arrested. I'll repeat that, it's important. The sovereign, in other words, the Queen of England herself, cannot be arrested or prosecuted by the courts, because the courts act in her name. So to put not too fine a point on it, the Queen could have strolled directly in the hospital, told the judge to take his ruling, turn it sideways, and shove it straight up his grabbed the family, escorted them to the chopper, and walked away and said, do something about it. That's it. The Queen's powers are limited. Quite limited in the 21st century. But if you do some research, there are some prerogatives that remain. This is why the Queen's vehicles don't have license plates. The Queen can drive 150 miles an hour down the main route of the UK if she really had a mind to do it. Because in all legal perspective, it's her damn road. So, the Pope stepped up and said, we will take this family in, and urged the Italian government to grant them citizenship, which the Italian government promptly did. They put a medevac helicopter minutes away from the hospital, ready to go at a moment's notice. If the Queen had seen fit to intervene, it would have been without question. It would have been to pull a line from A Knight's Tale beyond contestation. But Buckingham was silent. 10 Downing Street was silent. The UK failed Alfie Evans, the same as the UK failed Charlie Gard. And I've been listening to an amazing podcaster and YouTuber, Sargon of Akkad, a resident of the UK, one of Her Majesty's subjects. And if you want to get a little feel for how fast things are going badly over there, listen to Sargon a little bit. Or even listen to Jonathan Pye, if you're more along the left-leaning side of things, which if you're listening to this program, I sincerely doubt. But the UK is falling fast. In fact, some say England has in fact fallen. For to Josie Jackson, one of our great Lanterneers, one of our writers on lanterns.buzz, posted 4/25/18, same day, the fall of England has arrived, riding the people of its country like a beaten animal. Its people are now held against their will from leaving the country if they wish. I thought the death of this once great country would show itself through over-immigration and the violence that came with it. However, it is in the treatment of its most vulnerable people, the sick and dying, that has shown the truth of socialism most clearly. What happened to Charlie Gard and now Alfie Evans, along with their parents, shows us why it is not good to be living or sick in England, especially if you're fighting for your life. You will be left to die, because fighting for your life costs too much. You don't have a choice, because in the world of socialized medicine, your life isn't yours. It belongs to bureaucrats who have reduced your life to mere decimals as they determine your worth in terms of monetary definitions. I'm not going to read the whole story. I strongly recommend you check it out. Again, that's from Josie Jackson, Lanterneer, one of our fantastic writers on Lanterns.buzz. Absolutely heartbreaking scenario. And a cautionary tale. Every time someone comes up and says, Medicaid for all, or Medicare for all, socialized medicine, next time a Bernie bro comes at you and says, we should have the NHS, remind them of Alfie Evans and Charlie Gard. And say, next time, it could be your baby. So today, I say, remember Alfie. And remember Charlie. When we come back, we're going to get into the weeds here on my own home ground, where the HoloNet began. Facebook. The shroud is fallen. The emperor has no clothes. And Facebook's censorship of conservative outlets is now laying bare for all to see. You're listening to the HoloNet podcast on the Lanterns Media Network. Stick around.
I see people coming together not for divisiveness of party or for dichotomy of thought, but for unity in principle. In the principles that founded our nation, that all men are created equal and are endowed by their Creator with certain inalienable rights, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Today, ladies and gentlemen, those principles are under the sternest attack that we have seen in many generations. It has become a crime in this nation nearly to express a difference in opinion from what is held by your party to be doctrine, from what is purported by the media to be truth. We have an opportunity to reach out to our fellow Americans regardless of their creed and regardless of their political inclinations, and unite as Americans, not as Republicans or as Democrats, as liberals or conservatives, but to unite around the principles that have guided this nation so well. I've covered a lot of stories, but the story that remains untold is the story of America in the 21st century, when we choose to turn back the tide against progressive socialism, when we choose to embrace the Constitution, the Declaration of Independence, and the Bill of Rights, when we remember what it is to be Americans. And that principle will not die as long as there's one man, one woman, one child who looks defiantly into the night and says, I am free.
You're listening to the HoloNet podcast on the Lanterns Media Network. The new conservative resistance begins right here, right now.
Allied reinforcements have arrived from the west.
You're listening to the HoloNet on Lanterns Media Network. The millennial conservative resistance begins here.
See what happens when I'm gone for a week? I mean, seriously, I'm just gone for one dang week. Well, really 2 weeks, because, you know, it's a weekly show. So I'm gone for 2 weeks, right? And this whole Alfie Evans thing comes up out of nowhere, and God rest that little boy. I have twins. I have 3 little boys. I have a 4-year-old and 2 2-year-olds. They're just about the same age as Alfie Evans. So that one hit me right in the heart. And it captured the imagination and the heartstrings of a lot of people all over the country. And I just hope, looking back on the last segment, that it's something we can all learn from. And that we can take solace that so many people are aware now of the evils of socialized medicine and government-run healthcare that hopefully it never comes to our shores. But got to pivot, got to move on to a new topic, and it's just really, really insane now that the prospect of nuclear war is apparently gone. We don't really know what to do. It seems like we really don't know what to do with ourselves unless there's that ever-present threat of nuclear war with North Korea. And there it goes. There's apparently the bombs are coming in now. Oh, no, not quite. Taking a look at the latest news to come from North Korea and South Korea, it gives all the appearances right now that, well, the war is going to be ending. Now, we've been here before, but there have been very, very consequential, very symbolic gains made. The first time that a North Korean leader has stepped into South Korea since the Korean War itself. I mean, that's huge. But what is more striking to me is the mainstream media's complete and total inability to attribute any of this progress to the president, despite the fact that the Foreign Ministry of South Korea attributes this to President Trump. President Moon Jae-in himself attributes this to President Trump. Okay? And as a result of all of this happening at once, this Alfie Evans controversy, the new peace talks in North Korea, and also the continuing Russia situation where everybody seems to still be accusing Russia, the Republican Party and the Trump campaign of collusion with the Russian government, despite long ago, having lost any steam. And I just realized I'm no longer on Facebook here, so hang on just a second. Sorry. There we go. Nope. Oh my gosh, what am I doing? Take a week off. And look at this garbage. Okay. So as I was saying, Facebook. Checking with the Blaze today. And apparently, Facebook suppression of conservative opinions, #confirmed. 2 hours ago, Chris Enlow, weekend editor over the Blaze, broke the story. Facebook's latest technique to silence conservatives gets exposed, and the facts are damning. The facts are damning. says Facebook has been long accused of suppressing conservatives and right-leaning news outlets on its platform, but the social media giant was called out over the weekend for what appears to be just the latest technique the platform is using to suppress and censor non-progressive, anti-liberal viewpoints. In an exclusive story, the Daily Caller News Foundation obtained and reported on several hundred new text messages between FBI agent Peter Strzok and Bureau lawyer Lisa Page. The text messages were turned over to Congress late Thursday, and the DCNF reported out on them Friday morning. However, much of the DCNF's readership was unable to access the story after the news organization shared it on the Daily Caller's Facebook page. That's because Facebook labeled the story as spam and severely limited its circulation. Facebook went so far as to prevent users and the outlet from sharing the story, urging them to post something else. Facebook said, quote, "Our security systems have detected that a lot of people are posting the same content, which could mean that it's spam. Please try a different post." Facebook spokesperson confirmed that the DCNF, that its story triggered one of our automated spam signals, likely because of the high activity that is mentioned in that alert. Facebook assured the news outlet it would correct the error. Spokesperson said several news outlets have been affected by its newsfeed algorithm triggering a false positive that prevents the outlets from posting stories because the algorithm deemed them as spam. Now, also over the weekend, Dan Bongino, popular right-wing commentator, had his content suppressed. Dan Bongino, who is way more popular than me, I don't agree with him on everything, but he definitely commands a large movement on social media, and he gets spammed out of nowhere. He wrote, "Dear Facebook, care to explain why you're labeling content from my website, which people are sharing, as spam? This has to stop at some point, or conservatives like me are out of here. I've already sold my stock in the company and dramatically reduced my presence and posting here, but the next step is canceling the account. Clean up your act and stop silencing conservatives. At this point, I would like to remind you all that the HoloNet is also available on bitchute.com. That's bitchute.com. You can find the HoloNet podcast there in video form. When YouTube and Facebook do eventually censor conservatives to death, I think that's where you're largely going to find some of the more conservative content out there on the internet. That is on bitchute.com. And you can also find us on Patreon, as long as that lasts, because that's another group that seems to be bringing the hammer down, and also on Maker Support. So all of you out there that are huge supporters of the freedom of speech, you're probably going to want to look at BitChute and also Maker Support to support those creators. So, The Blaze referenced an analysis by Western Journal, which I recommend you check out. This is data back in March. Confirmed Facebook's recent algorithm change is crushing conservative sites and boosting liberals. And they actually laid it out very, very clean. The New York Post versus the New York Daily News. The Post is well known as a right-leaning outlet, whereas the Daily News has an established left-leaning slant. And the Daily News saw a 24.18% boost in its readership, and the New York Post saw an 11.44% decrease. And there are a number of these out there that are very, very easy to find. So, for example, Talking Points Memo took almost an 80% hit on the left, which is interesting. That would seem to be one of these strange ones. National Review took about 70% hit. About the only ones to see an increase on the conservative side were the Washington Free Beacon, Fox News, the New York Post, and of course Forbes, which the fact that Forbes is judged as being more conservative is very, very interesting. But yeah, you can check out this whole chart. It's very, very interesting. The Blaze, it looks like, took about a 40% hit. But the vast majority of liberal outlets have seen an increase of up to 50% due to the new changes in the Facebook algorithm. Now, speaking for the HoloNet, I know I've noticed a difference. I can't speak specifically to what Lanterns has seen as a whole, but I do know that the HoloNet podcast, and I've observed several other local conservative podcasts out here and local radio shows, have definitely felt the pressure coming down from Facebook. So I think the time has come for conservatives of the country to start seeking an alternative outlet. No, I try to put the HoloNet out there on as many platforms as I can, so we're on Facebook, Twitter, you can listen on Spreaker, iTunes, TuneIn Radio, iHeartRadio, Podcast Addict, there's tons, YouTube, BitChute, wherever you can find the HoloNet. I try to put it on as many platforms as I can, but where this program initially started out and where this dream kind of started taking shape were on the Facebook and Spreaker platforms. That's it. Then I moved on to Blogger, to Blogspot, where I set up the holonet.com. But it all began here on Facebook, and it's such a shame to see what that site, what Facebook has become. It's become more facepalm, farcebook. We're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we're going to talk a little bit about the Red for Ed movement out here in Arizona, as public school teachers are, quote-unquote, conducting a walkout. Most people would just call that a strike. That's approaching the third day now. So we're going to talk about that when we come back. You're listening to the HoloNet Podcast here on the Lanterns Media Network. Stick around. Hey everybody, this is Matt Holloway. You're listening to the HoloNet Podcast on the Lanterns Media Network, and I want to thank you for your continued listenership and readership and all the support that you've given me and everyone here at Lanterns over the course of the last year or so. Now, as we come up on a year of delivering this podcast on a weekly basis, we've begun to feel a bit more like a community here at Lanterns.buzz, and right now, we're a community that's in need of assistance. So I wanted to call on all of you today, if you can, to log on to patreon.com and search for Lanterns on patreon.com. That's patreon.com/lanterns, because we need your assistance in order to build this network out bigger, stronger, and better than it's ever been. With your support, we can bring in more voices that have been stifled. We can celebrate American exceptionalism. We can grow and educate our people. We can lift a lantern to shine a light into the darkness. Our mission is to shine a light on the actions that our government is taking now or have taken in the past to threaten the rights of Americans without consideration to the political party or organization. We will expose destructive counterculture that aim to destroy the idea of America and celebrate the parts of our culture that live up to the great ideals formally expressed by our founders. Up until now, our entire operations have been funded from the generous contributions of our team members. That generosity has created a growing demand for our pro-American content, and with that growth has come new challenges to expand our operations. Our goal is to expand and maintain the operations of our website and the radio network. And we humbly and graciously ask that you consider supporting Lanterns.buzz by becoming a patron on patreon.com. Again, that's www.patreon.com/lanterns.
Allied reinforcements have arrived from the west.
listening to the HoloNet on Lanterns Media Network. The millennial conservative resistance begins here.
And we're back. You're listening to the HoloNet podcast here on the Lanterns Media Network, and it is day 3 of the Red for Ed walkout here in Arizona. If you haven't heard about this at all, Red for Ed, or, a movement to increase teachers' pay, is going into its 3rd day of protests at the Arizona Capitol, and more than 100 Arizona school districts and charters comprising more than 1,000 schools notified parents that schools will be closed in response to the statewide walkout. The state's 10 largest school districts have announced they will remain closed on Monday. Arizona Educators United organizations have said the duration of the statewide walkout will depend on, quote, the response from the legislature and educators. Now, this is coming after Arizona Governor Doug Ducey has already pushed for the 20 by 2020 initiative, which would give Arizona educators a 20% increase in pay by the year 2020, moving in various increments, 15%, then I believe 4%, and then 1% in the final year before 2020. So here is the big question, okay? What the hell do they want? We want more money. We want more money. Okay, guys, here's more money. What do we want? We don't know. When do we want it? Now. Wait, what? So here's the thing. Arizona educators are making a bit of a mistake here. Okay? If they had waited a couple of weeks, just a couple of weeks, mind you, to take this kind of an action, to hold a bunch of rallies and pick up a bunch of steam and call out Governor Doug Ducey, I think they would have gotten a lot more support if they weren't screwing with the students' school year and substantially messing with a lot of parents' lives. Because, so many students, thousands upon thousands of students, are not going to be able to go to school. So, what do the parents do? They got to take off work. They got to pay for a sitter. I'm sure in the state of Arizona, it is a very good day to be a child care expert right now. You have more work than you know what to do with. There probably is not going to be a single babysitter available for the next week. And, the Arizona State Legislature, Doug Ducey, fighting this out on the floor, where to find funding. And there has been progress made in getting this action approved, this 20 by 2020, but it still doesn't seem to be enough. So we need to ask, what are the teachers' demands? So I'm going to go ahead and Google this sucker and see if I've gotten a better answer. Red for Ed demands, okay? AZ Central tells us, what are Arizona teachers' 5 demands? 1, 20% salary increase. Okay. 2, restore education funding to 2008 levels. This would require about $1 billion more in state funding to education. So that's insane. Where's that money coming from? 3, competitive pay for all education support staff. Because, of course, the teachers can't just be fighting for themselves, no, because they have to get the administrators and the janitors and all the support staff on board with them. 5, no new tax cuts. Can I get a hell no? Hell no. There's absolutely no way that the Arizona legislature should even consider this. This is the coup de grace right here. This is the insurmountable hill. This is the bridge too far that will stop any progress from being made along these lines. They have literally put up a demand that is impossible to meet. So, the Arizona educators are now going to take this threat of a teacher strike and roll it out every time there's a new tax cut? To be more specific, they're demanding that no new tax cuts are made until per-pupil funding reaches the national average. According to U.S. Census Bureau's 2015 figures, Arizona spent $7,489 per pupil compared with the national average of $11,392, difference of about 34%. But I think what a lot of people are missing here is that's the national expenditure, how much Arizona is spending per student. That doesn't qualify the level of quality of the education that they're getting. That just says how much money we're throwing at it. And speaking of money, where do they propose that $1 billion in additional funding come from? They're going to have to increase taxes on everyone across the board in order to make that happen. Can you handle that? I can't. Not in this fragile economy. You could tell me inflation's not going up. Anybody else notice that gas in Arizona hit about $2.80 a gallon this past week? I noticed. Anybody notice their grocery bill seemingly going up by about 5-6% per quarter? I did. And now, you're going to come here and say, we need to start taxing more at the state level? I don't think so. This is the time when you need to be reducing the tax burden on the population, not increasing it. But here's a thought, and I'm going to credit this to a couple of friends of mine. How about we talk about reforming the benefits package for these teachers? What do you think about that? When it takes ordinarily in, the private sector, those private sector companies that still have pensions where that's still a thing, usually that takes about 40 years before you can retire on a pension. Teachers, I believe it's about 30 years. So how about we push back the retirement age by about 5 years? Make it 35. Why then, you have all the money for a pay raise that you could need. It's worth thinking about. Why don't we look at that? Why don't we look at the benefits package and see how that can be priced more intelligently, how we can reduce the state's liabilities there to be able to meet that $1 billion gap in per student expenditure. Get back to those 2008 levels. And Arizona right now is on an economic upturn. What happens when there's another recession and these changes are codified? So the state must make them. You see, the way government finance works is you, in order to gain funding for something, can either tax it now, or you tax it later, or you pull funding from something else. Those are the three ways that you can do funding at a state level. Now, at the federal level, it gets a little fuzzy because you can talk about currency manipulation and all that and quantitative easing. But at the state level, you cannot generate currency. Same thing at the municipal level. You have to find the money somewhere. So you either borrow, you steal, taxing, or you defund something else. Those are your only options, kids. This Red for Ed is the state of Arizona's Kobayashi Maru, and the Arizona Educators Association has deliberately set us on a course with failure. They have set themselves on a collision course because they are outwardly denying reality. If they believe they can impose their will on the state legislature to not decrease taxes until that per pupil level is caught up. It's unsustainable. It's foolish. And it will end badly. So let's take one last break here. And when we come back, we have breaking from Fox that caravan asylum seekers are heading toward a showdown as U.S. officials say the border crossing is full. It appears that hundreds of asylum seekers who traveled through Mexico to the U.S. have approached the San Diego border, and officials are signaling they may not be able to make it through. We'll come back with that here on the HoloNet Podcast on the Lanterns Media Network. Stick around.
You're listening to the Lanterns Radio Network. We are the network dedicated to empowering the individual, illuminating the truth, defending American exceptionalism, and inspiring future generations. Stay connected and get involved at lanterns.buzz for great radio. Get commentary and news of the day. Lanterns.buzz.
Allied reinforcements have arrived from the west.
You're listening to the HoloNet on Lanterns Media Network. The millennial conservative resistance begins here.
Thanks for sticking around. Before we bring this show to a close, we have to address breaking news now coming in from The Blaze and also from FoxNews.com. Members of Central American Migrant Cavern are entering U.S. illegally, scaling the border fence as we speak. Federal officials said some people traveling with the Central American Migrant Caravan have crossed into the U.S. illegally over the past 24 hours, according to the Los Angeles Times. So, right now I'm seeing an image of members of that so-called caravan scaling the border fence near Tijuana, Mexico, and the San Ysidro border crossing near San Diego. So, in a desperate bid to enter the country, a pregnant woman, apparently, and some children as young as 4 were found entering the U.S. through dark and dangerous canyon, notorious for human and drug smuggling, according to the Times. They reportedly climbed over a broken-down scrap metal border fence, and they say we don't need a fence, near the San Ysidro point of entry, a land border crossing between San Diego and Tijuana. Others from the caravan, which has an estimated 400 members in all, were spotted Sunday attempting to scale the fence near the border. Now, going to the information from Fox News, it looks like they have a reporter on scene right now. Commissioner Kevin Michalinen, I'm sure I'm butchering that, was quoted, "At this time, we have reached capacity at the San Ysidro port of entry for CBP, Customs and Border Protection, officers to be able to bring additional persons traveling without appropriate entry documentation into the port of entry for processing." So they essentially do not have enough room for these people who are seeking asylum in the United States. He said the immigrants may need to wait in Mexico as CBP officers work to process those already within our facilities. Immigration officials had warned that the San Ysidro border crossing may not be able to hold the asylum seekers if they face too many at once. The port of entry, according to the agency, can hold roughly 300 people temporarily. Roughly 200 people, including women and young children, were expected to turn themselves over to border inspectors after arriving in Tijuana last week, claiming they had a credible fear of persecution at home. Demonstrators gathered along the border to hold a rally in the hours before crossing over, with some people scaling the fence. So it has come. The caravan that was all the news about 2-3 weeks ago has finally arrived, apparently about 400 people strong, at the fence outside of San Diego at Tijuana, Mexico. Border Patrol said Saturday that several groups of families from the caravan earlier tried to enter the U.S. illegally by scaling parts of a, quote, dilapidated scrap metal border fence, which if you take a look at these images on Fox, if you get the chance, that does not look like the big, beautiful wall. That looks like the scrap edifice of the old days of the Clinton administration's concept of what a border wall looks like. Oh, man. Customs and Border Protection San Diego Chief Patrol Agent Rodney Scott said, "As a father myself, I find it unconscionable that anyone would expose a child to these dangerous conditions." And I mean, you have to be pretty darn scared of something, or pretty sure of how you're going to be received on the other side, in order to put your kids through that. But at the end of the day, folks, we have to remember that this action is illegal. That we have borders in this country, because without borders, you don't have a country. It's a sad thing, but it's true. So Homeland Security Secretary Kirstjen Nielsen said that the asylum claims would be resolved efficiently and expeditiously but that asylum seekers should seek it in the first safe country they reach, including Mexico. There's a lot going on, and everybody's taking a deep breath after the Alfie Evans controversy last week and how sobering and disheartening that was. And then suddenly we're confronted with the prospect of possible peace in Korea, which we're all hoping doesn't turn out to be Neville Chamberlain revisited. Peace in our time. You know, at a Detroit rally, I believe it was in Detroit this past week, President Trump was welcomed with chants of "No bell, no bell, no bell," as the Telegraph in the UK said that if President Trump pulls this off, he absolutely must be awarded the Nobel Peace Prize. I concur. But with so much to keep track of at once, it's very easy to miss things like this caravan that has finally arrived at our southern border outside of San Diego. It's very easy to miss a group of educators trying to blackmail the government of the state of Arizona by putting up deliberately impossible goals and demands. Among all these things, we need to be watchful. Because I'm sure you'll agree that the unity of our nation is hanging by a thread. We've never been more divided. But we have to hold to our principles, to our Constitution, to our laws, and those things that unite us. We should be united in horror at the treatment of Alfie Evans by the NHS in the UK. We should recoil from it as one, as a single nation. We should be concerned at the humanitarian crisis at our southern border that was engendered by the left and by special interest groups seeking to undermine American law and sovereignty. We need to be united in our own best interests as a country. The best interests of our future. And also in our humanity. So while I look at the border, I wish these people no ill. I believe they must be dealt with humanely. And we should do everything that we can to protect them. Protect the families that have a legitimate cause to be here. Turn away those who do not. And get these people back to their homes safely. Because at the end of the day, they left their homes in search of a better home. But they have to do it correctly. There's a right way, and there's a wrong way to do these things. And we cannot sour the experience of emigrating to the United States by allowing these kinds of things to happen and allowing people to circumvent the system. From Phoenix, good night, God bless you, and God bless the United States of America. Have a great week, guys.